Where does the strong confidence come from? Because being on stage, those different type of stuff is not something that everybody does do. Where does that confidence come from?
People, they might be like, no, you know what? You tired of just
it?
coming back home.
Was it always your goal to come back to the island?
You spoke about that, but you also remember further earlier on in the interview, you spoke about being teased. You're passionate about fitness. You're passionate about movement. So how do you feel being tackled on that, knowing that it's something you enjoy?
Girl, a lot of insecurities, body image, self-esteem, self-worth.
I would like to introduce you all to a special guest. This person is a Zumba instructor, an art therapist in motion fitness, and also someone who really embraces femininity, if I say correctly. Shamine and I, well, as you know, Shamine is here with us. Charmaine and I have been in contact with each other, and every time we make contact with each other, we always go into deep conversations, no matter what the topic is. And I really enjoy that from her. And I said, why not have her on the podcast? And, for everyone else to hear who really Shamine is all about. So Shamine, really thankful for having you here. And I know I sent you a text. As soon as I sent you, it was nothing about, nothing else but positive energy. So we really appreciate that. Who is Charmaine George?
Who is Charmaine George? A daughter of the soil. Was raised on Statia, born on St. Martin, raised on Statia. From parents, Isaac Glover, Michael George. My mom is from Statia. My dad is from Dominica. Mm-hmm. So I would say I have a multicultural Caribbean background. Mm-hmm. I'm someone who is passionate about the art, dancing and art itself and music and drama, anything in that field. I'm passionate about fitness. I'm a very positive person. I believe in always looking at the good and looking for the good out of every situation. I'm a mother. Yes. Of a beautiful 8-year-old princess, Shaya, and I have adopted many children over the years by the work that I've done.
Can you imagine?
And I can go on, the list can go on, but I guess as the night goes through, they'll get a better impression of who I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I noticed you are a person who really expresses, either, through art, through dance. Where did that come from?
Growing up, I was always passionate about the art. For those who know, Miss Christina Timber, that's my aunt, and I always wanted to be part of a dance group. My mom, a part of her felt that it would have distracted me, but seeing that her sister was starting the Aloui dance group, that was my opportunity to get a seat on that. So I took it, and anything that they had in schools, whether it was dancing or drama, anything that had to do with stage, from pageantry, name it, I was always up for it. So it just continued to build from there. Went over to St. Martin, joined the dance group, went over to Holland, and that just blew up out of proportion, So it has always been a part of me since I can remember. I always had a desire to do that.
Where does the strong confidence come from? Because being on stage, those different type of stuff is not something that everybody does do. Where does that confidence come from?
The confidence that for being on stage, I think it came from my aunt. She always believed in me to a certain extent where she felt, Sha, you could do it. And my thing was always like, okay, you going to be there with me? My dad and my mom, they have always been supportive. I think for them, it was more of the protection role that they didn't want me to be put in a position where it backfired on me. But my aunt, you know, when she puts her mind to something, she's going to run with it. So I fed off of that belief and confidence that she had.
Yeah.
I fed off of it until I was able to level it out on my own, where it came from within myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And what was your childhood like?
Childhood. Growing up on Statia, I moved to Statia at the age of 4. So I did my elementary and my secondary school here. It was good. It was a nice period. I had a lot of friends. That was something that always came easy, making friends. I was in the stamp club, for those who remember the stamp club. I was in the stamp club.
What is that about?
The stamp club was this club. I believe it was organized by the post office and some other individuals. And they gathered a few youngsters who were interested in collecting stamps and trading stamps. And we would get sessions on these different stamps and the value of the stamps. So we were going around. I remember going around as a child asking persons, can you please, when you get letters, please save the stamps for me? And then they showed you how
different.
to...
Never heard about that, actually.
They showed you how to remove the stamps from the envelope. So I remember having these big stamp folders, you know, like how you have albums for pictures.
Yeah.
They had smaller versions for stamps. And then you would show up at the stamp club feeling proud of your collection. And then everyone looking like, well, what you have there? What you have there? Let me trade out knowledge. I know my value. You know, so it was a big deal. Yeah. I collected stamps. I collected phone cards. Back then when you had lunch radio, you had the phone cards and we had different images. And I remember there was this gentleman, he came from Germany, and someone told him I was collecting phone cards.
Yeah.
And he contacted my mom. He sent a letter. Back then, you know, it was letter. He sent a letter saying that I'll be visiting and I understand your daughter collects phone cards and we like to exchange. So when he came with phone cards from all over the world.
Wow.
So he was trading out my station phone cards for...
That's actually a thing? Wow.
And then I didn't have no album to collect the phone cards in. So, you know, like the Huggies came in like these containers. So I had containers all through the house full with phone cards. So I guess that came also with the art aspect of, you know, that those images and those pictures. And it opened up a world to me as a child, exposing me to things that are out there, making me even more curious to see it for myself, you know, because these phone cards were pictures of these places from all over the world. I was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. You know, you didn't have access to internet like that. So those things just was intriguing me. So childhood, I was in the stamp club, I was in the dance group, I was going to drama club. Name it that they had. I mean, besides the church, you had youth group, you had the girls brigade, you had choir. My schedule was tight. Besides my schedule, I spent a lot of time outside. It was always an adventure. Where are we going today? Which playground we're going to play today? Which tree we're going to climb today? Which season it is? If it's Kinip season, if it's Pumps and Receiving, the Tamarind season. And I was always the one who would climb the tree. And then when I get down, I asked my cousins to help me. When I get up, I asked my cousins to help me down because I can't get down, you know. But jumping on the bike, standing up on the pegs. I remember standing up behind a UDM bike on the pegs going down and passing the neighbors and their dogs running out. And you're like, go. It was adventurous.
But it sounds fun. It sounds like full of... Yeah, just fun.
If I think about it, I can't even see myself leaving Shia do those things. I can't see myself leaving Shia do those things, but that's what childhood was like. Linking up with the cousins, linking up with the other children from the neighborhood, and just doing outdoor stuff. What are we going to do today? And, you know, camouflage, hide and seek, where everyone puts on the colors, brown and green, and you go hide in the neighborhood. That was so fun. It was adventurous. It was adventurous, yes.
Do you have those collectibles still?
Girl, now you got me here talking about those things.
You're going to find a way to locate it.
I'm going to have a conversation with my mom and say, Mom, you think, because I'm someone, I don't like to get rid of things. I don't throw out things that easy. So, leaving the island, you leave all those things here. Where we leave things with our parents, ain't no guarantee where we come back, they're going to be there.
Yeah. Especially if you move into another place too.
Yes, so that is a good conversation to have with her.
Yeah, but it's something different. Like,
yes.
That's the first time I actually hear a stamp club.
No, they have a crew of us who was in the stamp club. Let me tell you, it was a big deal. Yeah. It was a big deal. We learned a lot, the history about the stamps, the background of the stamps. It was a big deal.
Yeah,
I could picture myself collecting these envelopes from different individuals, sitting down home, having a bowl of water. I can't even remember if it was warm water or what. And then you turn the envelope, you cut out a piece, you turn it upside down, you leave it soak for a while, and then the stamp, the residue, the glue is going to let go, and then you leave that air out. It's a whole process.
That sounds like history there itself.
Yeah. So those are things that they had a lot of activities. Yeah. So that was a big deal. I looked forward to that. Yeah.
You said it had more activity. What do you think now to how the current situation is?
Now, I believe that I get the impression that there's still a good bit of activities. I think it depends on the child itself. It's personal. For me, I like doing stuff. So every time if they came with cooking class, Mommy, I want to go. And remember, I was the only child, so it had nothing going on home. So, if they came with drama class, Mommy, I want to go. If they came with STEM club, I go. So I was in a lot of things. And I think in today's time, the children are more strongly opinionated about that, what they want to do. And because you have the digital aspect where they're also being entertained virtually,
that's true.
So that also pulls attention. The only time I would really sit down behind TV was 5 o'clock when you have the whole sequence from Duck and Duck and the whole works come down and you would run behind the TV because that's the time that going on till 7.
Yeah.
But throughout the day, it was all about outdoors and doing activities. So I think it's just a level of interest now and the access that we have. Back then, we didn't really have that virtual aspect. The children have that now, so it just fits more to their timing. And I think the excitement in how you bring things. For example, my daughter, she dances on Saturdays, she swims on Monday, on Tuesdays, and Fridays. She's on the chess club on Tuesday. So she has about 3 different activities that she's in
every week.
So I think it all depends.
Times change.
Time change. Because I'm talking on behalf of myself, but that doesn't mean that everyone from my time was in everything.
But I'm glad you brought it up because you bring up something I didn't even know about. How was it being a part of Girls Brigade?
Being a part of Girls Brigade, it was fun. It was a community of sisters. Growing up in the Methodist Church, they say it's a family church, so therefore in Girls Brigade I had a lot of cousins as well. The brigade officers, Teacher Alice, she's been there from day one. When I see her up today, I'll be like, boy, she's going strong. But it was nice. It was something that I look forward to on Thursdays. I looked forward to marching to the point when they even started with the drum band. And first it was only the boys in the drum band. Then they said, okay, they're going to allow girls to be part of the drum band. So, I was like, I want to try this out, So I played the drums. So the last years of Girls Brigade, I played the drums. Standing up in the fort. For the whole ceremony. That ain't for the week.
That ain't change.
That ain't for the week, but I learned a lot. And it's all part of character building as well. So I would do it all over again. I would do it again.
Nice.
And we're talking about, like, you say, like, the kids these days, they have a social media aspect to it. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think everything has a good and a bad, and so as social media. For example, it's what they're exposing themselves to. If it's positive content, if they're learning stuff, then that's a plus. Back then it was books. I would spend my time in the library, because that's the way you had to find your information. Now you don't even need to read a book. You can
Yeah.
ask Alexa, you can ask Google. It's going
Yep.
to give you all the
Yeah.
information. So it's what you use it for. And if you're using it for good, if you're using it to improve yourself, if you're using it to enhance your knowledge, you know, things that you can benefit from now in your daily life, but also in your future, then it's fine. Do I believe in monitoring screen time? Yes, I do believe in monitoring screen time, you know. When I got my daughter her tablet, one of her first tablets, I put a certain time frame on it for screen time, which, say for example, was an hour or 3, for example, in that time frame per day. So, and then they had a window where she wasn't allowed to log in. So when I get in her ready, or she's ready in the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock, before school, she can't even access that.
Yeah.
The door access don't open until she comes home, and then it got a window
That's
where
good.
it closed off. So even though she didn't cover all the hours, once that window hit, it gone. So she's looking at me now like, baby, yeah, that's the agreement.
Okay, so you have that set.
So then I don't need to be hovering
Check in,
over
yeah.
her, monitoring, and then you have the parental control over it, so you know what she's exposing herself to. So I think as parents, you can't stop them from the digital world because we got to go with the time too. As you see, everything is going digital now, but you have to try your best to guide them, monitor them, explain to them, you know. For example, I have open conversations with her, and I say, you know what happens if you do too much screen time. This is what happened. These are the effects of too much screen times. What are things that you can do besides screen time? You know, so there needs to be a balance. Why is it important to have a balance? So it's not just put on the tablet, Shaya, leave that
Explaining
alone.
how.
You have to explain, because the children, they can't understand, you know.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to explain and you find it difficult, find a video on that same tablet and show them what it does, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it. So
I really
it has its pros
appreciate
and
that.
cons.
Even through this, you providing parents tips, you know, and advice. So thank you for sharing that. And apart from it, I also would like to know, what is it from your childhood you would like to pass on to your daughter, or you have done doing it?
One thing I had from my childhood, I was always family oriented. Family was always a big deal. You know, I looked forward to the holidays because, for example, Christmas holidays, those were spent at my grandma's house. That's where we get gift exchange, and you did eating, and, you know, traveling. I traveled a lot when I was young. I saw what it done to me. And that is something I've been implementing with Shaya from day one, you know. So she have traveled, she have seen places. I think it's important that she knows where she's from. So besides being here on Statia with my family and her dad's family, I think it's important for her to also know my dad and my siblings who live abroad and his family. So we take trips to Dominica like every other year, so she knows that.
So she stays connected.
Oh yes. So those are things that she looks forward to. So that is something growing up, the family oriented aspect, that is very important. So that's what I ensure that she experiences well.
Yeah.
And you said like growing up in Statia, at a certain point in Statia, you just have to travel out and go. You went to Holland to study.
No. So what happened? I ended up doing MPC. So I passed valedictorian for Governor de Graaf at the age of 11. My mom and my dad agreed for me to stay, not for me to leave at such a young age. Then they didn't have HAVO here.
Oh, okay.
So I did the MAVO. I wasn't pleased about that at all. I wasn't pleased about that at all. So I did, after graduating MAVO here, I went to do HAVO at MPC in St. Martin.
Yeah.
So I lived 2 years with my dad in St. Martin, did the HAVO, and then I moved on to the Netherlands. So I went to the Netherlands in 2006, yes.
And what was it like? Because sometimes, you know, a lot of persons get like culture shock and stuff like that.
In
How was it
Holland?
like, adjusting in Holland, or was it normal for you?
I've had one encounter with Holland because I've been to vacation. I did a 6-week vacation when I was younger on Holland. And you know, vacation and living is two different things.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of positive things about my vacation in Holland. But Holland was something that was always on my plan. So if something is on your plan, which you placed on your own plan, you won't look forward to it, you know? So I was looking forward to going to Holland. Culture shocks, yes, a lot of culture shocks.
Like, name them.
Culture shocks in the aspect of you going to school and realizing they have rookruimtes, like they have smoking areas. And I'm like,
Oh, in school. Yeah.
you know, and the clothing that was worn, you know, like growing up here, you speaking on behalf of myself, growing up here, you had uniform. MPC, you had uniform. Going to Holland, you didn't have uniform. But then, even though you didn't have uniform, I was always taught to carry myself and dress a certain way. So when I show up at school, presentable, covered, and I see classmates in their short pants, in their back coats, and look like
attending to class,
look like they just come from the club, and sometimes I believe that they just came from the club. I was like, oh my goodness, like this is so different for me, but also the openness in the sexual aspect that comes with living there. The smoking aspect, that comes with Holland, and the easy access to those things, that was shocking to me.
And what do you think about it? Do you think, how did you feel about it? Do you think it's too open, or do you think, hey, we should be comfortable with it and not hiding or so?
Look, for me, I feel that everyone works with a formula that works for them. Everyone works with a formula that works for them. Me, for example, seeing the smoking aspect, me seeing that aspect of the Amsterdam, what Amsterdam is known for. I've seen it. It shocked me. I took it in, and that was it. So it didn't make me feel insulted. It didn't make me feel like, oh my goodness, I need to get out of Holland. I know that this is not home. Well, this is going to be my current home, but this is not where I came from. This is a different culture. So you choose what you want to keep with you, and whatever you choose to move forward, make sure that you're choosing correctly. So there's those who choose and jump into that culture, and there's those who choose, like, you know what, it's there and that's fine. Just like they have things here on Statia that I don't go with, but it's there. But but there's a group who goes with it. So that's why I say that every formula works for different people.
That's true.
So it didn't bother me to that extent. I know what I stood for, and I just stood by that.
So you was in the Netherlands. You spoke about being there. And you are art therapist. Was there the place you actually went to do art therapy?
When I left MPC in St. Martin, I registered in Hogeschool Utrecht to become a Spanish teacher.
Okay. Nice.
So I went Holland to teach. I said, the elementary life is not for me. I'm going to choose a secondary. If I'm going to choose a secondary, I have to choose a subject. I always loved Spanish. I chose Spanish. The teaching career didn't went as I would love to. It was a lot of hurdles. And 4 years into the teaching aspect, I remember like falling. I would feel it was a slight depression. And I remember having a conversation with my mom, and I said, this is what happened. These people are giving me a hard time. I have what it takes, and they're telling me I need to switch, and they're telling me they don't want me. I have to do something else. It was a lot of negative vibes. And she said, well, I calling your father now because we send you a ticket to come back, Statia. I said, Mommy, I ain't leaving Holland. And she said, why not? I said, if I leave Holland, ain't nobody going to get me back on KLM.
At least you was that determined, though.
I said, I ain't leaving Holland because if you bring me home, I ain't coming back.
Yeah.
And she said, but what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I gonna figure it out. I gonna work, because now if you're going to school, you can't get study.
Yeah.
So therefore, I have my place to cover. I have my other stuff I
Yeah.
need to cover. So I said, I gonna work. I gonna work full time. Where you gonna work, mommy? I don't know. Holland full of jobs. I gonna figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And then there was this, how you say, like a mentor for the Antillean children, and she would keep in check. She would check in on me. At that point, you don't want nobody checking on you.
Yeah.
You don't checking on you because you're like, I was like fed up. I was like annoyed. And she said, you ever did a career test? And I said, career tests are for people who don't know what they want to become. I know what I wanted to become. I knew what I wanted to become from day one. And she said, you should still try it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a bit receptive. I'm going to try it. And I tried it, and art therapy came as number one.
Oh, okay.
I have never heard about art therapy in my life.
Yes.
I have never heard about art therapy in my life. And I was like, what is this? You know? And she said, go to the open house, check it out. There's one in Utrecht, there's one in Leiden. I went to Utrecht. I was like, this ain't gonna work. This ain't gonna work. I can't register this. I went to Leiden, and I remember my showing up at the school building. My first impression was like, oh my God, this is huge. This is beautiful. And I was like, I know what this art therapy about, but I impressed at the catchment for the building.
Yeah.
You know? And when I walked in, I went to the different sessions, and it was structured.
Yeah.
The people sound like they know what they were talking about. Was I bought? No. So I was like,
Still need more to convince you.
and not even that, like, how can a computer decide for me? Like, that don't make no sense. Like, a computer going to tell me what it finds suits me, you know?
Yeah.
So I remember coming home this summer, and I was like, time going, you got to register into a school. You got to register into school. Girl, I writing on faith. I wrote into that school on faith. I got my materials. I remember showing up to the day like, Shamine, you can't be serious.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember sitting in some of the classes that was like, this is a lot of heebie-jeebie. This don't make sense. This don't make sense. But it was so much people there, and I was like, well, apparently it makes sense. So these four classes, classes about 25 students, and that's like 100 students registered for this thing. And I was like, it makes sense to them.
Yeah.
So I was just going with the flow, like safeguard, going with the flow.
Yeah.
And I remember one day my mentor, she pulled me in and she said, you're here, but you don't here. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, the teacher's saying that you're here, you don't really participate, and you're just on the back burner. I said, that's true. That's true. And she said, why? And I said, I'm tired. And she said, tired about what? I said, I'm tired of being here, putting my best, giving my best foot forward, and people just intentionally blocking me while all I'm doing is trying my best.
Yeah. So in that moment, you were really still not past that you didn't continue the Spanish teaching?
No, because after the Spanish, I did 2 years of the Spanish, then I switched to the Pablo, and every time I remember doing the Spanish, and I got enough points, I went over to year 2. When I went over to year 2, my mentor from the Spanish, she had a conversation with me. She said, I don't think you'll be a good Spanish teacher. And I said, excuse me?
Wow.
And she said, I think you should do English. English is your mother tongue. You should do English. I said, if I wanted to do English, I would have voted for English.
Exactly.
Yes.
She said, well, I'm just going to let you know, if you do switch over to when you switch over to English, I will give you vrijstelling from the subjects, so then you don't have to do those things over, so then you automatically going to flow in year 2.
Yeah.
So I came home with that year on my mind, and I was like, shall you want to do English? I was like, if you wanted to do English, you'd have done English. Don't let nobody determine for you. And I chose and I did Spanish. I wrote back in for Spanish.
Yeah.
So when I came back to school, and that first day of school, I walked into her class. I walked into my class, and she stopped the lesson, or she was talking, and she stopped, and the other classmates were there. And she turned to me and she said, what are you doing here?
Oh, wow.
And I said, excuse me. She said, I told you to write it for English. I don't want you in my class.
Wow.
Wow. And in Holland, it's known to be direct, right?
Yes.
The culture.
You know, and I continued, but she gave me hard time. You know, like when somebody going to make sure that you don't be there. Yeah. And I got discouraged. And I was like, I don't want to be in an environment where someone is picking on me, where someone is pushing me. And it really, how you said, demotivated me.
Yeah.
And I swapped.
So I guess that's why you had that, you know, like you say, you're there, but you're not there because you still didn't pass that.
After those, but it was one thing after the other. And then when I got to Leiden, because I was like, but I ain't troubling nobody.
Yeah.
You know, that's what my thing. I was telling, but I ain't troubling nobody. I here doing what I got to do. I said, I've been given nothing but effort. And I said, right now, I'm running out. Mm-hmm. So I just here, as long as me troubling nobody and I get my grades good, like, just let me be. And she said, Charmaine, that ain't going to work. And then I realized, like, okay, I'm going to try to open up a little bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was making friends, you know. So that aspect, that wasn't an issue. But she said, Charmaine, you have to open up a bit. And I say, every time I open up myself and I show vulnerability, you all take advantage of me. Mm-hmm. She said, who's your all? I said, oh, you Dutch people.
Yeah.
Are you teachers, you know? Yeah. And so I was doing what I got to do. I was getting my grades and everything. And I remember, girl, it was a long story. And
Be here for it.
And I remember when it came to going over to the second year, she pulled me in and she said there was a meeting and the teachers say that you don't have what they were calling in Dutch, a therapeutische houding, which means a therapeutic, a therapist attitude, how you present yourself. And she said, it's because you seem closed off. And I said, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Wow. Mm-hmm. And she said, she said, they're saying do year one over. I said, but that don't make sense because I passed my subjects. Yeah. And she said, but maybe you just need to open up a bit. And I said, tell them I disagree.
But I mean, if you pass all the subjects, and
they had about 3 subjects I didn't pass, but I had enough. 3 subjects I didn't pass to get my plupadizer. Yeah. But I had enough to go over.
Yes.
And I told her, tell them I said no. And she watched me like, what? I said, tell them. I said, no, I am not doing year one over. I am continuing to year 2. Mm-hmm. Yes. And she said, well, if you disagree, you will have to go in front of the examiner committee. I said, set the meeting. Yeah. I said, set the meeting. And I set the meeting, and I remember in this room, and they were all lined up, and they were asking me questions. I presented myself, and they said, okay, we believe you go to year 2. You go to year 2. When you go to year 2, all the subjects that you have in the first trimester, you have to pass with the subjects that you didn't, the 3 subjects that you didn't pass in the first. Mm-hmm. I said, fine. Yeah. And I remember stuffing my paint and my clay in my suitcase to come home for the summer because I was like, it's a lot of artwork you have to give in as well. And I was doing that. And I remember coming back and you give in your projects, and then I had my theoretical subjects to do, and I gave it in. I was like, okay, let me see what's going to happen. Because they were saying if I didn't pass everything, I would have to do year 1. Mm-hmm. And I remember that a day I was walking down the hallway, and she jumped out, and she hugged me. And I was like, what's going on? And her name was Elena Henselman. And she hugged me, and she said, Charmaine, I'm so proud of you. I said, proud of me? She said, you pass everything. Yeah. I said, what? She said, yes. But she had don't tell me which teacher say which what and who they say what. Now the confidence level was up.
Nice.
Yeah. So everybody class who had something to say when I showed up in those classes, I make sure to sit them right up front. I position myself up front and I said, okay, when they got questions, and I switched. Yeah. You know, and I switched, and I must say, it was not my plan to be an art therapist. Yeah. But it was God's plan for me to be an art therapist. Yeah. And I think falling on art therapy, the first 2 years was heavy. Mm-hmm. Remember, all your professors are art therapists and psychologists and doctors. So they would be able to pick up things from you. Mm-hmm. So starting off as a group of 100 students, by the time we reached to year 3, we were down to like 40. Yeah. And they carried us through therapy year 1 and year 2, because you don't do job training until year 3, because they want to make sure that everybody's mentally stable before you work with anyone. So year 1 and I felt coming out of that dip, what I would consider was a depression, and falling on the art therapy doorstep provided me the tools and the skills to heal. I remember there was this thing, you had to do your own biography, and things that I suppressed over the years were coming up. It was freaking out. And then not just writing a biography, but creating artwork that have to do with your biography and presenting it to your whole class. So I remember standing in front of the class and the tears just rolling down my face, and I was like, I just ended up where I needed to be. So by the time I went to job training, I was just acing my job training. It was just a walk in the park. So I was like, yeah, I'm just where I need to be.
I mean, good thing that you pick up for yourself, because for others, they'll be like, I do Spanish teacher, I'm going to do something else. And then these people being really hard for me, on me. And also it's within the culture to be direct too. And it's up to you how much, you have to pick up for yourself.
You have to pick up for yourself.
Because for other people, they might be like, no, you know what, I tired of just coming home. I coming back home.
And growing up in a culture where you have to respect your elders.
Yeah.
And address your teachers by their last name. And going out in the world of Holland where they don't want you call them by the last name. If it's Charmaine George, they want you to say Shamine. They don't even want Yuf or Menade. So don't get me wrong, how we were raised here, we were raised well and mannerly. But the skill set that I had when I went there, it wasn't applicable. So me having to address and having certain respect, and when you go there and the way how they treat you, you're just a number. And then there's an aspect of racism. And then you always talk about peers bullying peers, but then you have teachers bullying, and who's supposed to be your mentor, your Berkeleiter, and look out for you and got your back. They ain't doing that, So it's like, I didn't have the skill set to tackle those things, because you grew up in a community where, people want the best for you. Or a lot of your teachers are probably local or family or whatever. But when you out there's a different ball game. So at that point in my life, I was like, look, it done. I ain't leaving here. Nobody even chase me here. Set up the meeting. Let me tell these people what, because this is how it's going to happen. I say, I don't have my mom here. I don't have my dad here. I don't even have no one else here to advocate for me. It's for myself. I have to do this. And once I stood that ground and I showed up and I did what I had to do, I signed a paper, girl, I never looked back. I signed that diploma that day. I didn't even wait for graduation. I signed that diploma and I left, and I know I conquered what it was not in the time frame that I had planned it to be, but it was in the right time.
Was it always your goal to come back to the island?
Always.
Yeah?
Always my goal. I came back in 2015. I was working in Holland. I was working in the hotel field, which I did for about 6 years. That started off as a part-time job, and I went into full-time. But I really had a desire to work in my field, which was the art therapy. But it was hard. It was hard to get a job. And I said, you know what, Sha, why are you forcing something up here, and you could go back home and see, So I started applying everywhere here. And sending open applications, so open solicitations. And everyone was like, no, we ain't looking for no one. So I was like, boy, not even home want me.
Oh boy.
Like not even home wants me, And I was like, Chad, but do you still want to go home? Even though you're not getting a job and you're leaving a job in Holland to go somewhere where you don't have a job. I said, yes. I remember calling my dad and I said, Daddy. And he said, you want to come home? Just out of the blue. My father never asked me that. He asked me that. And I started crying. I said, yes. He said, okay, well, get your stuff in place. You're going to come home. And I came home on faith. I said, when I come, maybe if people see me,
that makes a difference too.
I had just gotten my Zumba certificate a few months before I came. So I was like, even though you don't have a job, like, still do the Zumba, keep yourself busy. I started serving tables by Laurie's, and then within the second week I was serving tables at Laurie's, this ad came out in the newspaper for ECE looking for someone, but my mom showed it to me, and I'm like, but mommy, they're looking for a person with a teaching degree. I don't have teaching degree, I have teaching experience. She said, man, apply for the thing.
Exactly.
You know, I applied, and almost 10 years later, I'm still there. You know, so I came home on faith. It didn't go, but I was like, Sha, come home. You're going to figure it out. Everything's going to fall in place. And like I said, like, I didn't just come home heavy, as in demotivated and lock myself. I said, let me do the Zumba, keep myself busy. Even if I got to wait tables. I remember one day I was weighing tables at Laurie's, and this lady stopped me. She said, can I ask you a question? I said, yes. And she said, what is your name? And I said, Charmaine George. And she said, what did you study? I said, art therapy. And she said, you're going to go places. I could tell by your mannerism that you did something. And I said, oh, thank you for that. By the second week, I called Lars. I said, Lars, I got a job.
But that's nice, though. It's really good. Like, sometimes maybe you go out and study, and then sometimes you don't end up getting the job you want, but sometimes it takes a little bit more time and patience to get there.
Trust the process.
How was it expressing yourself? Like, to me, I think art therapy really goes deep within yourself. Were you comfortable with that when you went into the course?
Art therapy, it's non-verbal therapy form, so which meaning that speaking is not required. It hit layers under layers down to your core. And we growing up in a society, a community where there is strength in silence, or you have to be strong, and the only people see that you're upset or shake it off. You know, I entered into that with that. I mean, I always had a positive mindset. That was always there from the get-go. But being vulnerable to that extent, where you can tell people, this is what I was bullied and I was teased. And those are things that I experienced. I was bullied, I was teased for my size. I was, oh, you're so skinny, you're shaped like a boy. You like, the whole works, name it, you know. And talking about whether you didn't really have that emotional aspect growing up, where we sat and talked about emotions and this and that. That wasn't really present, you know. And it would be rare for you to see your parents cry. Most if you see them cry, it's because of a funeral or somebody passed. But to say that tears is something rare. You know, to the point where some people get uncomfortable when they see other people cry. You know, so for me to do those art stuff and open up, it was lifting layers, and that's why I tell you, things that I had suppressed.
You felt exposed.
I was exposed. I was exposed, you know. But that, like I said, was what I needed. And it's impossible to be a therapist, help people on their healing journey, help people to be vulnerable if you don't know what it's like to do so. So I needed to know what it's like, because when I have persons sitting across me, I supposed to be able to put myself in their shoes and know how difficult that is. And doing that study allowed me to be vulnerable and in a safe space, in a non-judgmental space. And just like how I was showing and sharing my vulnerabilities, I had classmates sharing theirs. And everybody has a story. You can't see it. A lot of times you can't see the wounds that you carry, because a lot of them have to do with emotional wounds that we carry within. It's scars on our body. But everybody has a story. You know, everybody has a story. So when you sat down that day in the room and people crying with you and you crying with them, and then you look and you hug each other and say, now I understand why you are so-and-so, or why you do things so-and-so. It runs deep. So then you learn to appreciate people even more. And it makes you look at people who are going through difficult situations different. It's a different perspective. You empathize with them. you know. So yeah, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. Like I said, when I went in there, I was like, remember, I didn't know what I was signing up for.
Yeah.
If I had known
You
what
sign up for your own therapy?
I had known what art therapy was about. Because remember when I go into the open house and reading up online, it could give you a certain impression. But going there, I always had a passion for psychology. And psychology and biology was some of the main subjects. So I always had, so that was something I was always intrigued. But I go in there thinking I go and help people. Me going in there thinking I get to help myself.
Yes, that's it. So it's that
which makes sense, you know. But when you realize how deep it was going, I was like, you know. But but some didn't make it true. And that's why I said we started with a big group, but by the time halfway through, a lot of people didn't make it through because they couldn't deal with the things that they had. You had to give in these reports, so you don't know who eyes going on these documents.
And being vulnerable,
girl, it was like naked. It was naked, but it was a good feeling to be like, it's out. So I probably carry this all the time, thinking that I had to carry it by myself, hold on to it, instead of giving it a place to process and to open up the doors of healing and to free myself for a lot of things that I was just holding myself captive for, which wasn't even needed.
What was it? What were the things that you didn't like up there?
Things I like about Holland. Well, I danced when I was in Holland. I did a lot of dancing. So I was still happy that I was still able to continue doing that, something that I was passionate about. I traveled a lot. I've been all over Europe. You know, so at certain points I would tell my mom, "Oh, mommy saved the ticket. I ain't coming home summer." She's like, "What?" I said, "I go in places."
You don't know what you have here. So it's
I said, "I'm going to come home December, man." Because like Holland, you don't get to experience good weather. So where it is, I running coming home, Statia for summer, and Holland got summer. Well, I could take a chance in December when Holland cold and come and get summer.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I love the possibilities of traveling. I love shopping. I love that I want something. I see something I like and I want it today and I could get it today. You know, I love the different cultures. I love the art and the buildings and the structures and the stones. And
that is true. That is something I see different.
That's for sure.
Those is things.
The building is so different.
Oh, it's beautiful. The architecture is beautiful. I just love the idea that I could jump up and say, I want to do this today, and I could do it today. You know, just the accessibility and doing things, and there was endless things to do. I was never bored.
That's
nice. For sure.
I was never bored.
So why Statia then?
Statia is home. My family's here. My roots are here. And I believe in giving back to the community. And I believe for us who've been on the outside, who've experienced the outside, you come back, you give, you strengthen the generations to come to go back out there. You know, it's a joy to be able to talk to students who's going in the outside world, whether it's St. Martin or wherever, especially Holland, and there are questions they ask, and it's good to be able to give answers, you know, so they don't have to invent the wheel. I mean, you don't have to come back from Statia to give that information. You could do that virtually. But me being here is proof and testimony that if I can do it, you can go out and do it too, whether you choose to come back home or not, but you can become something of yourself. You know, I went to the same elementary schools as you. I went to the same church as you. I've had the same, grew up with a lot of friends and family, and same high school. So the same route that I took, you are on right now. So
that is a definition of a true mentor and not the one you experience, you know? You embrace and prepare them.
Yeah, and ain't nowhere like Statia, boy. Ain't nowhere like home. Like, ain't nowhere like home. It's just the slow pace and the nature and the island vibe and not having to structure your day to a T. You know, that's the lifestyle in Holland. It was like clockwork. I mean, after a few years, it just comes automatic. I was there for 9 years.
Yeah.
But I just love the freedom of being home. I ain't saying that I wouldn't do that again,
Yeah.
But at that point in my life, I had felt like, it's time to move on.
Yeah. We spoke a lot about the artistic expression. Let's dive into music and dancing.
Okay. So, like I said, growing up, I was always passionate about dancing, and I always was active. So remember I told you I had all of those activities when I was here. When I went to MPC, it was softball, it was volleyball, it was dancing, so it was kickboxing. So when I went to St. Martin, just how my schedule was full here, my schedule was full there, and it was just movement is my outlet, and I feel that there should be a balance. So I don't see myself waking up every day waking up, going to school, come home, doing school, waking up, going to school. I find that it should be a balance, and it mentally levels me. And so doing the dancing, and once again, it was my aunt who pushed me to do this, encouraged me to do the Zumba. She sponsored the Zumba training. And when I started doing the Zumba. So I started doing the Zumba in 2015. We're in 2025 now. So the passion for dancing and then my background in fitness, I love the gym. I love
You always had it within you?
I always had it. So the gym picked up from St. Martin, from MPC days. So when MPC, that's 17 years, 18 years, I picked up the gym.
Yeah.
So when I went to Holland, I just continued it. So I was like, dancing and fitness. Dance fitness. So when I started off doing the Zumba, it was Shazumba. And over the years, I kind of swapped over from the traditional Zumba moves, and I start to incorporate fitness. That's when you come with the resistance bands and the weights, because there were persons and women, especially women, who were asking, but can we do stuff that could be toning? Besides asking, can we do toning and stuff like that? So I was like, okay, we're going to figure it out. So I just revamped the formula.
Yeah. You spoke about that, but you also remember earlier on in the interview, you spoke about being teased. You're passionate about fitness, you're passionate about movement. So how do you feel being tackled on that, knowing that it's something you enjoy to keep you fit?
Growing up, I was teased a lot. I was bullied a lot. Remember, I used to go Governor de Graaf School, and Governor de Graaf School was connected to the GVP school. So then the GVP students would be sitting on those, what they call the benches right now.
Yeah.
And then you had to pass. It was almost like every morning, like a walk of shame. Like you had to pass through those benches, and then you got the older children there, like, look at she on the TT, look at she on the Pepsi. The whole works. I was like, okay, I didn't show that it bothered me, but it bothered me
mentally,
and I grew up with a lot of insecurities physically.
And looking at you wouldn't think so.
Girl, a lot of insecurities, body image, self-esteem, self-worth. So I went to MPC, I left. So all in MPC, I was feeling that way. Going to Holland, I was feeling that way. I think I didn't really break out of that until probably like I was around 25. It was late. So I remember being insecure about my size. I was never on the fullest side. I was always slender built, athletic built. And I was being teased for my build, And I remember when I would be coming home, getting ready to come home for Holland, I would start to eat up all kind of shawarma, capsule, and do them, name it. We got a knoflook sauce. Seriously, try to add on. See, hope I gain a kilo or two, because I don't want a body like tease me or mention anything about my weight when I come home. So I was doing that for years. That was like, Shamine, this is crazy. So all of that, going into the art therapy and digging deep and seeing where that came from and how that formed me into the person that I am. And people wouldn't know, because I was on stage. Remember, I had won the dancehall queen competition, so I was always on stage. I was always doing things, But remember, that was my drive, that was my passion. Those are things that fueled me. So those are moments when I was feeling good about myself. And I remember telling myself, after when I realized where that came from, and like, you don't have to do this to please no one.
Yeah.
You know, and that thing was giving me a lot of anxiety, and it was robbing me of my, I was getting robbed of my joy, I was getting robbed of my pleasure. And I said, Charmaine, if you're slender, are you athletic build? Or be the hottest slender athletic build person around. You know? So I was like, you healthy.
Yeah.
You're healthy.
Exactly.
That is what matters.
Yeah.
And I just continued going to the gym. I just continued. I said, just be the best version of yourself. And I see myself as clay. The molding process don't stop. You know, so I just continued doing so. So I remember coming home a year, and this guy said, you're so skinny for me. I like my girls, I want to take a side. And I said, well, you ain't even my type. You know, like, you know, like, so I was like, you know, and we live in a culture where people feel so comfortable to say something about your looks, about your weight, about your appearance. They feel that it's just normal, and they don't think about what it's doing to that person. You know, and a lot of times when it's people who giving you feedback, they ain't the healthiest on the block, you know, like,
I was just going to say,
ain't the healthiest on the block, you know, and body image is real. I work with I work with children on a regular basis, and I have children coming across my table. The average girl student that comes on my table have a low self-esteem.
The average.
And there's a lot of them struggling with body image. So what I mean to say, they don't feel that they're pretty. Because that's my thing. I wasn't feeling I was pretty. I wasn't feeling that I was attractive because I didn't have the trending body. You know, and now we are exposed to all type of social media where this, and you have a lot of girls comparing themselves to that, you know, and it's sad. It's sad. There was a teacher, straight up, I don't like how I look. I don't find myself attractive. I find myself ugly. You have a lot of, and I'm talking about girls, you have women in the community too. You know, and it does a lot of harm. And I tell people, I said, at this point, I don't need to compare myself with nobody else. You know, I just need to compare myself to the person I was yesterday to ensure that I'm better than that version that I was.
That's who you're doing it for.
I do it for me, you know, and confidence going to take care of. So I didn't always have a confidence shot. I had a confidence to be able to perform on stage. I remember when I was going up for my first pageant, I was 10 years, and my aunt called my dad asking if it's okay if she can get permission for me to participate. And he said,
Christina?
And he said, Shamine can go on the show, but don't put Shamine in no bad suit because she don't have body for that. You know, and so that just show you how tiny I was. But you know, they don't do bathing suit for Junior Queen, but he has Queen, so he think. So now when I wear my bathing suits, he'll be like, I said, oh, no, I got too much body for that. You know, that kind of way, you know. So, but girl, I didn't always had it. So it was a long time. So imagine if I'm telling you all this went on till about 24, 25, which means to say I just made 37 the other day. Which means to say that over a half of my life, I struggled with body image. You know, so that's a long time. It's a long time, but it wasn't always that way.
Speaking about the body image and the art therapy, to give a better understanding of what is exactly
art therapy,
is it that, for example, let's say you're sitting down with someone and whether it's drawing or thing, and you can tell based on how they do certain stuff that how does it particularly go?
So art therapy, I'm specialized in painting, drawing, and sculpting. So when you think on painting, you could think on different type of paint, acrylic water. When you think on drawing, you could think on color pencils, crayons, markers, chalk, charcoal, name it, anything that falls in those categories. Each technique covers certain areas. So for example, if there's children that is struggling with concentration, there are certain, I can pull from the different techniques, but there are certain activities that I would give them to do. If you're going a little bit deeper, say for example, children who struggle with a low self-esteem. And I said, okay, today we're going to talk about confidence. We're going to talk about how you present yourself, how you walk into a room, how do you speak, how is the tone of your voice, is it soft, is it loud, is your body slouch, is it open? Okay, we're going to make a confident sculpture of a person. I don't need to worry about the facial, the smile, this. I just want to see from their build what a confident person looks like. Let's build that.
Nice.
And you would see, they would be like, stop, and a lot of them would say, teacher, I could get that inspiration online.
Yeah.
You know, and you would look and say, or you ask them freely to build a person without giving them the instructions, and you save that person, that sculpture, and then you say, okay, today we're going to build a confident sculpture. Let's put them together. What do you notice? And what do you realize? What do you recognize in yourself? If you look at those sculptures, where do you find that you function the most? Okay, what are things that make you feel that you function in this area? Okay, what can we do different to get you to this area? You know, and so you create a conversation based on the activity. So when they come and I tell them, this is what we're going to do today, I don't talk. The only talking I do is the instructions given, or unless they ask me for something, because I should not influence their work. Same thing with painting. They do it. When they're done, I said, okay, tell me about what you made. How was it? What thoughts came to mind? What feelings came to mind? What part did you find it challenging? The most challenging? Which part did you find the most easiest to do? Why? And you have a conversation, and based on their answers, you ask other questions. So throughout the process, it's just them in their work. Art therapy, the difference between art therapy and, they say, an art teacher, because you get that mixed up a lot. Art therapy, we don't really focus on the end result. We focus on what you experience through the process, because a lot of emotions, a lot of things are going to stir up. So that's also affecting the process. Of course, you're going to look at the end work, but it's a lot of what happened.
Process.
When you're doing, or I noticed when you was building the torso, you paused. There was a moment where you paused and you stopped working. What was that? What were you thinking on when you paused? So those are things. So while I'm observing how they handle, how they put everything together. Sometimes they put and then the hands fall off or something. And then you leave that so, and then I show them, this is how you build a sculpture. A confident sculpture where it's not going to fall apart, where it's going to be solid, where it's going to be thing. And so that's how it goes. The only time that they really do their own thing is in the first tree work, which is called the diagnosis phase, where they get tree free work. They get a free painting, what you will call. They probably get a sculpture person, and they will get a house tree person drawing. So those, and they do that. And then I analyze their work. And then that helps me build a trajectory plan. But the rest stuff is mostly guided. Unless there's a day like, teacher, Miss Charmaine, I really want to do something. So, and then, okay, there's space for that. But most of the stuff is guided based on the trajectory goals that are formed from the beginning.
I like that you explain that. So it's a lot of stimulating questions, and not that you telling them what it is, but you let them the chance, giving them the chance to reflect and see for themselves what they see, and then throughout the conversation you get to know more about them.
Yes. So it's not feeding them the answers, but just kind of triggering for them to get the answers.
You go ahead.
You give me another question. Me as a photographer, I could never, like if I watch a movie, if I do anything, I'm always thinking about what is photographer thing, or what is it? Can you turn off the art therapist side of you?
Like when I'm looking at work? Yeah,
if you see somebody, you do like a painting or something, now you're trying to analyze it instead of just maybe just going through that specific thing.
And the beginning it was harder to turn off. At this point, I turn it off.
Okay.
Like the other day, I just had sipping paint.
I was going to ask about that.
That was my
I just had my first sipping paint on Wednesday, and I had a question. Someone asked me a question. Someone who participated in the sipping paint said, "But I was expecting you to analyze the work. How come you didn't analyze the work and tell people you see?" And I said, "It wasn't a setting the time for that." I said, I was happy and grateful that it was sold out. That I had so many persons came who was willing to step in a space like that, be vulnerable, and put something on a blank canvas. Usually sipping paint, you got some of the sipping paints where they give you a print. I chose not to do the print.
I noticed that.
I chose not to do the print because I wanted everybody own to be unique.
Okay.
And I said,
beautiful.
When you put some anybody in a space, especially if they're not accustomed or doing anything like this.
Yeah.
I said, you don't go to that deep. And if I'm going to do that, I have to ask permission.
Yeah.
Because me saying what I see, that doesn't mean that you want everybody else to hear.
And it's a setting, yeah.
It's
the
not
type
a time.
of setting.
It's not
yeah.
a time and place for it. You know, if somebody had come to me on the side and say, I would want you to have a look at my work, that's different. But I wasn't going to put no one on the spot in doing so. I know what it's like to have your work.
Exactly.
To have your work read, you know?
Yeah.
But a lot of times people, when you put stuff on when you create art, a lot of times what you're creating comes on the subconscious. So which means that you're creating from a place of freedom and you're not even aware of what you're placing on the canvas or what's it speaking. Because what you see, I might see something else.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
You know, so I wasn't. So I explained and then they're like, okay. I said, and something like that, it'd have to ask permission and I wouldn't do it such a big group. I would do a smaller group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would do a smaller group, yeah.
If they're open for that.
If they're
Exactly.
open for it. So if persons are coming, then you would let them know from beforehand, this is how that we're going to go into it. This is what we're going to cover.
Yeah.
But it wasn't to touch that. I mean, you see certain things and like, okay, but I know that wasn't what I was there for that night.
Yeah.
So I just looked at the work and loved the work. So I looked at the work and I complimented people on the colors and the imageries. And I was just so amazed by all the beautiful pieces. And I just took it for what it is and I didn't look further than that, honestly. Yeah.
You know, we're in Mental Health Awareness Month, and I noticed on the flyer you actually embraced that the sip and paint was about mental health awareness. What made you say, let's decide, made you choose to do a sip and paint?
My background in art therapy, I can do a lot of things. And I have been putting a lot of things on hold.
Yes. Pending.
A lot of things on hold. And I was like, Shaba, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
You know, and my passion has always been to do art therapy with adults. That's something I did in Holland.
Yeah.
You know, now because of the organization I work with, I only do with children. But I was like, okay, what way can I present myself and create the opportunity for me to work with adults?
Yeah.
Seeing that the sip and paint is a big hit lately and people are becoming more familiar with it, that is a beautiful way to glide in. Seeing that we're in Mental Health Month, why not glide in with that aspect? So I was like, Sha, once you book it and you make the flyer, you can't turn back.
Yeah. So you left yourself to stay.
You know, so I was like, this is something you always want to do. You always say you want to do it adults, you want to do it adults.
Yeah.
Do the thing, you know? So I just put it together. I was like, and it was nice. It was really, really nice. Yeah.
How was the impression from the audience, the feedback?
The feedback from the audience, from the time they came in, they were like, oh my, in here so nice. In here so relaxing.
Yeah.
And I asked everyone to have a seat where they're comfortable. And from the time one person saw the camera, they said, but this ain't got on nothing. Why got it? I need internet.
Surprise.
I need internet to look up for inspiration. And I said, relax.
Yeah.
You know, relax. So I had like a warm-up activity before we touched the canvas.
Yeah.
And the warm-up activity was, I said, you know, select two color paint that speak to you at this moment. And with that paint, I just want you to move across the table. You don't want to make nothing. Just move across the paper.
Yeah.
And for some person, that was a challenge. And I said, if you feel that you can't let go of control, close your eyes, drop the brush on the paper, and move.
Nice.
Don't create
Nice.
nothing.
Yeah.
Each canvas had a ribbon tie on it. So before they started, I said, this ribbon is symbol for you starting something that is unique to yours, to you. You don't have to worry about what your neighbor doing. You just gotta worry about what is in here, and you put it there to your best you can. There ain't no wrong way. I ain't looking for no Picassos. This ain't no Picasso. This ain't no Picasso workshop. This is just people who are open and receptive for trying something new and relaxing. That's what this is about. So let's start this journey. Let's start this process. And I said, okay, undo your ribbon and let me start. What it started.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Nice. But even in your whole way, how you see you started off from the beginning, the way you speak also comes the audience, and you have that naturally. I think I always tell you
they
that the
also
way
tell
how
me
you
that.
speak.
Yeah, so I had on my little I had on a humidifier, and there was smelling like lavender.
Yeah.
We had this soft music on.
Yeah.
I had like some snacks on the back by the bar. I told them, I said, no one has to get up for drinks. Your cup will be filled all night. So they were excited about it. So for the time cup dropped, they were filled, so nobody had to move because I didn't want people to be moving around and distracted. But it was nice.
Yeah.
And by the time was up, I was like, okay, it's time to like, already bye, finish. You know, people was like, why I want to continue? And that's to show you how quick the time is going. Because some people don't really take the time to pause. You know, you live in a time where you're just going.
Exactly.
And when you pause, you forget how nice and how needed and how necessary it is to pause. Yeah. And I think that was also beautiful to see everyone. You know, one person was painting and she had one brush in her mouth and let's paint. I was like, yeah, boy, they in it, you know? So it was just nice. And then I asked everyone to take a walk around the room and look at the different pieces. I said, when you walk around, you don't have anything to say. Yeah. You just have to look and observe. Yeah. You don't need to give feedback. Just look and observe because we are so quick to give, say this. Yeah. Just look and observe, you know? So it was nice. It was nice.
Before we round off, I wanted to ask you about feminine. What do you think about that?
For me, being feminine, it's very broad. And for me, it's about knowing who I am, loving who I am wholly, but also keeping space to improve myself, to be better for myself. And by bettering myself, it helps me to help others. And I always say that God gave me these gifts, these talents, not for my benefit, but to help others around me. And growing up, I listened to Saskia Vida the other day and I started to laugh because I had my little tomboy phase. You know, where I wasn't a bodosh, I hated dresses. I hated wearing dresses. And I remember I would go to church and they had some girls, I ain't calling no name, they were wicked. They would tie my ribbon to the back of the chair, so when it's time to get up to sing, like they pull me back. You know, so that's the same thing I was telling you about the whole thing, you know. And I had dislike dresses. You would see me in shorts and t-shirts. I had so much t-shirts was just in my closet, you know. And going to school, I remember I would be going to school in like baggy clothes, but my mom used to work Governor DeGraff. She was secretary. So when I was going to GVP, boy, sometimes when I used to sleep by my grandmother with Udian, so I would take up his boxer and his baggy pants, his school pants, and I would go to school. Like, you know, like this had like the shoestring inside his shirt. I would got my hair cornrow and I would walk in and I would have my mother ponging on the window. That's what you're gonna be a grandmother to sleep to do this. But you know, when it came to work and job training, doing those things, I showed up accordingly. So growing up and as I got older, it just wanted to have to experience that softer side of myself. And I realized, like, okay, shift a bit, you know. And that was a phase when I was, like I said, doing a lot of self-work, And I was like, people always would be like, she's a girly, you know. Like, you would always tease people who are girly. And I was like, ain't nothing wrong with being girly or embracing, you know. I also people I own heels and sneakers. I don't really have no flat shoes. So when it comes to wearing flat shoes, I just got to be looking to order flat shoes, you know, because I was in the gym, giving classes, or when you see me going to work, I try to be as polished as possible, you know, but it wasn't always so. But I guess it could also be a part of that baggy aspect of not feeling soft and girly and feeling insecure with my own physical attributes and not being attractive, that it was easier for me to hide myself under those clothes and have that swag. And I was a cute tomboy, but, you know, hide myself under that swag because, like, you don't find me, you find me good looking anyway, so me even take it. But not to say, like, I was doing it to pull up the same sex, you know, but just that I felt comfortable in
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
type of clothing.
Yeah.
But as you get older,
And also fashion too, right?
and fashion.
Yeah.
So as I got older with the time, I was like, I loving this and the self work and, you know, just working on myself and exploring the softer side of myself. And I just fell in love with that side.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, and then when I look at my daughter believes in a dress. She believes in a tutu. You know, she's a fashionista.
Yeah.
Better school uniform is blue.
Yeah.
Shy, what ribbons you want to wear today? Orange and pink. You know, so I see that in her, and I'm like, she probably see that. So if I dress a certain way, and I'm like, baby, like, let me go to I would do it intentional. I said, baby, we're going to the shop. And she said, Mama, like that? I said, how? She said, Mama, please fix it here. You know, like that kind of way. So she has it down pat. But when I was that age, ain't nobody could have given me no dress like Shy.
Yeah. You have a different look, a new look.
Yes, I do.
What made you, you know, like sometimes some women I can say, there's fear going through that phase of cutting the hair. And I would like you to know, okay, people are saying hair always does grow back, it's just hair.
Yes.
How you felt when you made that decision to cut your hair?
This is the second time I've big chopped. I big chopped in 2009. I cut a few, like 2021, but nothing to this extent. So this is the second time that I've chopped where I could hardly grip the back. And it's been something I wanted to do for a while, and I wasn't happy with how my hair was. I got some heat damage, and I wasn't happy with how my hair was, the condition, the health of my hair. And it didn't matter like what I'm trying, what I'm doing. I'm like, it just ain't bouncing, like, you know? And I love to be versatile. I love to switch up my look. So one day you're going to see me like this. Next day you see me afro. Next day you see me with some 22 inches. You know, like it just switches up. I like that. And then I got to the point, last week I was in St. Martin, because today's a week since I did it. I was in St. Martin and I was like, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity I've been waiting for. This is here. Yeah. And, you know, I was looking nice for my birthday. You know, I had in the long extensions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I had a long extension for my birthday. So my birthday was a Thursday. I chopped on the Saturday. And I was like, Sha, you look good, but does it feel good? And I said, no, it don't feel good. I look good, but it doesn't feel good. And at this point in my life, I want something that looks good and feel good. And I was like, I'm going to make this appointment. I ain't telling nobody because I don't want nobody discouraged me. And I did. And I cut it off. And I'm happy that I cut it off. Was I nervous? Yes, but she didn't even give me the chance to think twice. So by the time I done showing her the picture, I saw the hair falling on the floor, and I was there, ain't no turning back from there. So that's how quick it happened. And I am someone who loves my natural hair. But like I said, I love versatility in different styles. So I would swap out. But I feel if I love my natural hair, I'm supposed to be able to rock my natural hair confidently. And with the state that my natural hair was in, I couldn't rock it confidently, you know, and I had a lot of insecurities about it. And anything that makes me insecure, anything that makes me doesn't feel right, I cut it off. I release myself of that and I start over. So I still have my natural, and people say, but you cut it off here. I said the same formula that grew it is the same formula was still in here. You know, but anything that makes me uncomfortable, anything that makes me doubt myself, you know, and I said at this point, I do not want to be having to hide my hair because I am not proud of it. I am insecure of it. Of course, you're supposed to love yourself in whatever form that it is, but it was not a healthy form
for you.
You know, and how it was growing, it wasn't healthy. And why hold on to dead hair? For no, and you could just start over. And not even like enter a new phase then. So you don't even like, you know, in that sense. So I cut it.
So you let it go when you look in the mirror. I actually did it.
Look, so when I saw what she did and I looked at her, I said, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good when everyone see this. But I was like, you know, the feedback has been
Yeah, it looked
positive.
nice.
Everyone
Yeah.
likes
I like
it.
how you cut it actually. Like you cut it in a shape.
Yeah. So they cut the shape, the sizing gone.
Yeah.
I got something working right on the top, you know.
Yeah.
But I love it and it feels good. So I'm even at the point where like
Free.
I need to run for a week. I need to look for a hairstyle. I need to put in some braids. I need to do that. I was like, this is me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, people have a thing like, yeah, short hair women don't be attractive. And I was like, no, they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
You know that kind of way, like,
Yeah.
you know, but that's just stigmas again and opinions and stuff. I was
yeah.
like, it's how you carry yourself. And I said, I always believe in show up as you want to be treated.
Yeah.
If you want to be treated well, if you want to be treated with respect, you have to show up and carry yourself in that certain way.
Yeah.
You know, so people are like, you got time to dress up every day. I said, because when you dress well and you carry yourself well, you don't know who you're going to come across. You don't know what opportunities there. Look that day in the restaurant, that lady asked me where, and she said you're going places. You don't know who you're going to meet.
Yes.
So always try to be ready. If you
Exactly.
stay ready, you don't got to get ready.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, and sometimes we wonder why opportunities ain't showing up, and a lot of times is we blocking our
How you
own
present yourself.
blessings.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
because we wasn't ready when the opportunity there. So I'm gonna stay ready.
Exactly.
I'm gonna stay ready.
So at least you share that, you know, for everyone who always saying, you know, you only in station, where you going, where you gotta be dressed up. So, you know,
you never know. We in Statia, but Statia is a hidden treasure, and people love treasure. So people are continuously coming to the island. So you don't know who coming. Yes, you don't know.
It's
And
super
if we are called the hidden treasure, we gotta look like treasure.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what it's
One question before we close off, and we always ask all of our guests this.
yes.
What does mental health mean to you?
Mental health means to me knowing yourself, clarity in your mind, being able to create safe spaces for others. Mental health means for me balance, not just mentally, but physically, spiritually, in all areas of life. Mental health means to me power, healing, transformation, growth. I believe as long as you're breathing, as long as you're living, there's always an area in your life where you can grow. And I feel that if you're honest with yourself and you put in the work, it will give you the opportunity to break generational curses, generational cycles. You break cycles. And I don't think about myself alone when I'm focusing on my mental health. I have a daughter. So how I shop for myself is how I'm going to shop for her. You know, so the stronger I am, the more I put work on myself, the more I'm able to give to her, the more I'm able to give to the community, the more I'm able to give to others. So it's a chain, it's a domino effect. It doesn't stop at you. It continues to generations till we're no longer even physically existence. It's going to continue. So that's what mental health means to me.
Wonderful.
Really in depth.
Can't ask for
Nice.
better than that.
Thank you so much. I know many people looking at you on the podcast too. They really will enjoy this conversation. So if you all have made it this far to throughout this interview, just remember to subscribe. That way we know that you are really enjoying what content we're putting out. So thank you so much for watching.
And like I say on the talk, Jackie the imagery, capture the moment, watch it forever. See you guys in the next episode. Bless.